Good morning, welcome, happy Christmas. I'm going to cover a music review on this video, and I'm looking at the 2020 release On Sunset by a musician I have a great deal of affection for, Paul Weller. But before I get on to reviewing this glorious piece of work, I'm going to do a brief synopsis of Paul in terms of his life, history and his career. Born in 1958, Paul of course is a singer, songwriter and musician. He achieved fame with the punk rock new wave band, revival band, The Jam in the late 70s. And I saw The Jam at Loughborough College in 1979 and they were absolutely a tour de force. Enjoyed every minute of it. He then had success with the blue-eyed soul music of the Style Council for 6 years in the 80s before establishing himself as a solo artist with his debut in 1992. I'm using Wikipedia as the source for this material, so you can check it out if you wish. Despite widespread critical recognition as a singer, lyricist and guitarist, Weller has remained really a national star rather than an international one. You talk to Americans and very few of them have even heard of him, which is their loss, I'm afraid. Much of his songwriting, though, is rooted in English society, and many of the songs with the Jam had lyrics about working class life. He was the principal figure of the 70s and 80s mod revival, often referred to as the Mod Father, and an influence on Britpop bands such as Oasis and Blur. I'm going to now develop a bit more of Weller's early life. As I said, born in 1958 in Woking in Surrey, which is a matter of 15 minutes from where I was born. So I took a particular interest in his work. His parents, John and Anne, and he was born John William Weller, but his parents adopted the name Paul. I'm not quite sure why that happened. His father was a taxi driver and a builder, and his mother a part-time cleaner. He started school at Maybury County Primary in '63. His love of music began not long after. He was a young primary school student, but he was still keen to get the benefits of the Beatles, latterly the Who and the Small Faces at the end of the 60s. By the time Paul was 11, he'd moved on to Shearwater County Secondary School in Woking, and I'm familiar with that school because I played football for my school against them on regular occasions. But of course Paul was 4 years younger than me, so our paths didn't cross. He did start playing the guitar not long after, but after seeing Status Quo in concert in 1972, that was it. He was committed, and he formed the Jam, playing bass with his best friend Steve Brooks, who played lead, and Dave Waller on rhythm guitar. His father, John, became the acting manager, a role that he would continue throughout Paul's career until his death a few years back. He managed to book a local working men's club for the band. There were some changes shortly after that. Rick Buckler came in on drums, and Bruce Foxton replaced Waller on rhythm guitar, and they started to become very popular. The four-piece band began to develop quite a local following, and they played a mixture of Beatles covers and a number of compositions that had been written by Weller and Brooks. Brooks left the band in '76, and Weller and Foxton decided they'd swap guitar roles, with Weller now the guitarist, and the Jam as we know them had merged with punk rock bands such as the Clash, the Damned and the Sex Pistols, and they became extremely popular. First single in the city went into the UK top 40 in May 1977, and the Eton Rifles hit the number 3 spot 2 years later, but their first number 1 was Going Underground in March 1980. The popularity of this band increased, however, significantly, but Weller became restless and wanted to explore a more soulful, melodic style of music. And so, right out of the blue, in 1982, he disbanded the band, much to the irritation of the 2 remaining members. Foxton was particularly unhappy about this decision. So the Style Council was then assembled in the early 1983 and had a life of 6 years. Weller was able to experiment with a wide range of music, from pop and jazz to soul, R&B, house and folk style ballads, and they were extremely successful. A number of very popular singles became chart toppers. Long Hot Summer, I'll remember, was one that certainly lingers in my memory banks. The band was really a vanguard for the jazz pop revival, and it also introduced us to one Mick Talbot on keyboards, and strangely enough, Talbot reappears in this new album on Sunset. However, the band's decline in popularity and certain issues with the recording company led to the band disbanding at the end of the 90s. And after a sort of break, really, of over a year, where Weller was trying to reconsider his next move, he then decided to embark on a solo career, which commenced in 1980. He was involved politically throughout the 80s, and we will remember him in Rock Against Racism concerts, and he was very left-wing in his viewpoint. But once the solo career was launched, the politics were put on the back burner, and it saw a return to more jazz guitar-focused sound, featuring samples and a funk influence with shades of the Style Council sound. And then he then continued down that road. Now we're 14 albums on from that debut in 1990, and I have reviewed a couple of albums on my channel already, but we're now at the point where I'm about to look at this new album. It has to be said, though, that Weller has continually evolved musically, and it's clear that he continues to look forward with an eclectic mix of modern music, pop, jazz, rock, synth-based sounds, and world music sounds litter his releases over the last decade or so. And now here on Sunset, his latest release, is, I think, the best yet. And it's no surprise that it shot to the top of my albums of 2020, and more about that in another video. I'm now going to start to run through the album track by track, and the opening cut is Mirror Ball. This has a psychedelic haze to the mood that stinks of an old pro delivering music at the top of his game. The piano eases into a seductive rhythm littered with sounds of synths, noises and space-like innovative amalgams of keyboards, with Paul's vocals standing above it all like a conductor. Well, this is a long way from the jam. The production and engineering mix are exquisite, and it finishes off with rolling piano and a classical style, plus strings to put it in a neat bow. It's an awesome start, a concoction of R&B, funk and electro choral segments with moog and guitar from Steve Craddock. Lyrically, I think the song's about people going for a night out clubbing, I imagine all these kids lining up outside a dance hall. And Weller told Mojo magazine it could have been the Wigan Casino, Northern Soul capital, or somewhere today equivalent, whenever. And once they're inside, of course, he continued, it's when their lives come alive. They're united and ignited by the music. It's a song about the power of music. That's a direct quote from Paul himself, so I'm not going to quibble with that. Track 2 is Baptiste. It's a bit more conventional, this song, a steady rock beat with some aching rhythm guitar, and then the sound expands, a catchy duet of lead guitar and keyboards with a touch of horns lending itself to a style council mood. It becomes funky and it's a little gem. Lyrics, not sure about this one. Continued inspiration of music maybe as a large part of life's story. A new awakening to spiritualism maybe. To track 3 then, Old Father Time. This is a strange one. It's synthesized lush sounds below a melody that lurks into Stevie Wonder-like territory briefly, and then a funky chord riff. There's a lot going on here on top of a bluesy beat. Wah-wahs mixed in with synths. It's got a hint of Curtis Mayfield with the horn additions. Lyrically, it's about aging. That none of us can avoid, and a message to appreciate love. So to track 5, and this is the jewel in the crown as far as I'm concerned. It's called More. It's the album's centerpiece. A pulse of African-style percussion struts out at the intro, and a brief taste of female vocals sang in French gives an Afro-world pop feel. It's sexy, it's smoochy, it's arranged pop with a polish courtesy of the strings, and the horns spit out at your senses. This is 5-star quality. Style Council meets jazz meets Afro dance, and this earthy tribal sound is maintained amidst a Hollywood-like score that dances in and out. Dabbling sections of flute and a full percussion rush intermittently. A glimpse of dual guitar picking solos which sound exquisite, and then a horn shuffle plus Santana-style lead runs. It's absolutely terrific and will force you to shuffle back to it so that you can get another hit. Lyrically, I think it's a dig at materialism and how it's overrated, and discussing the real value of living, the misguided belief that will be better in another place, you that is, with more of this or of that. The title of track arrives next, and it opens to the sounds of waves lapping over the sand. And there's a nice acoustic guitar and bass that link to synthesized rhythms as the vocals arrive. The harmony vocals are impressive, giving a soothing feel on top of stylish lead vocals. The spacey rhythms are replaced by strident horns and strings, thankfully. The orchestration's a little heavy-handed, but it leans towards Style Council's style. The keyboards and guitars mix again, and it works perfectly. And there's more lush strings attached to a supple chopping guitar rhythm briefly before we gently slide over the water at the outro. Lyrically, I think it's a look again at nostalgia of impending mortality, at life passing by, and reflecting on those good memories in life. To track 7 and its equanimity, a bit of a change of pace and mood here, a musical hall excursion intro. Piano prompted with a sprinkling of horns on top of a whimsical vocal. Very Beatlish, vocal straight out of 60s Seaside Variety Show, I felt. A nod to Steve Marriott and the Small Faces. It's a bit slapstick, and there's the Wurlitzer in there and the euphonium as well as it slides to the outro. It's very umpire and comic and has David Bowie style vocals. Lyrically, the importance of giving, and in an old age being content with helping others and discarding that self-centered approach. Paul's always had socialist views, and here he is accentuating. Track 8 now, then Walking. A cacophony of synth noises greets a marching beat which is driven by a piano. It also has a sort of funfair feel about it, candy floss, sweetness, and a brief taste of trumpets and horns on top of pianos. Punchy, happy singing, very much pop-like. It's fun. It's pure fun. Lyrically, it's another song about ditching prejudice, nationalism, and suggesting one walks around and looks and learns and accepts and be willing to change instead of residing in the past. Right, Earthbeat's up next, and it starts off with some mystical, soulful female vocals that struck gently into a style council guitar-like beat that aches of danceable tempos with that sync 21st century feel. The orchestration that guarantees a mirage of sounds vibrating behind that soul bass, and there's an array of noises that segues into rockets, the next track. Lyrically, Earthbeat, well as empathy with the planet and its vitality linked to existence, I think is the message here, telling us of the diversity we live, its beauty, its pain, its desire to survive, its history, its memories. Track 10. A simple acoustic riff collides with Paul's pleading vocal, and he adds in a jab of rhythm guitar, and there's some zippy horns linking up with the orchestration again that makes for a full wall of sound. You can't help but say to yourself how far this guy has come from in the city. Lyrically, it's a song about the power within each of us. But don't be tricked into believing the state's view that monetary wealth is all-encompassing. Look elsewhere for high value within yourself. Now, on my digital copy, I had 3 bonus tracks. The first, Fourth Dimension, begins with psychedelic synths again. It immerses itself into horns and funk and trippy lead guitar that's used sparingly. And then the whirling sense of spaciousness hits you, coupled with occasional harmony vocals. It's like liquid gold, but very, very strange. No lyrical comment on these bonus ones. To the next bonus track, this is called Ploughman, and it's a return to standard simple soft rock with pretty keyboards and a lead vocal that's South London in delivery. It pumps in a brief sax break and it's over. Lyrically, I got this one, a message about the value of work and what folk reasonably expect from their time. The proletariat, I guess, a few token pleasures, a reminder of past rewards for those who work the land. And finally, the third bonus track, I'll Think of Something. It's acoustic laden. It's a ballad with dreamy strings in patches and summer piano tones, and with a halo of weariness wrapped around the orchestral mood. Lyrically, it's a life lesson about how we can still be valued after one's death. A legacy, a memory, a thought. Beautiful. So that's it. My summary now of this piece of absolute tremendous set of songs. On Sunset is almost as good as it gets when it comes to Paul Weller. I loved it from the first listen, and the more I listen to it, the more I get from it. This artist has developed beyond all expectation. Some people criticise him because they say he's forgotten his roots. No, this guy, he knows his roots. He just wants to be eclectic. He wants to develop his career and dip into different ideas, different types of music, and he doesn't want to be repetitive. And I admire him for that, and he delivers. He delivers with an accomplishment and a quality that few artists are currently producing. And I would thoroughly recommend, if you have not listened to much of Paul Weller, do get to listen to this album. It's right up there in my top albums of 2020, and I will be doing a top 20 from 2020, and you can rest assured it's in there. So that's my review of On Sunset, the new album by Paul Weller.